So do you find fulfillment in your work?
Depends on the day. Depends on the job we're doing sometimes. So for those, well, I guess everybody listening, a lot of people listening wouldn't know what I do. So I grew up with a family business, a sawmill. I've been doing it since I was about 9 years old, part-time, started full-time at 11, like all my older brothers did. It's been a very good job. My dad taught us a lot of good lessons through working together all the time.
What's
I
your
would say
favorite?
for the most part, I do find quite a bit of fulfillment and the flexibility that it gives for, like today, for example, some of my family and I went and sang for an old family friend. One of their children passed away here. And so they're, an old family friend of my parents, I should say. And one of their children passed away here. And so we shut down the mill to go and sing at this funeral. And it was a great thing to do. And so we have a lot of flexibility for things like that and with our family and with my wife and my 2 children. It's a real blessing.
So you grew up in a Christian family, right?
Yes, I did. Very much so. So I grew up I actually have a hodgepodge background, I guess. My upbringing was basically just a typical evangelical Christian. I was born in 2002 and raised in, for the most part, Baptist setting, although there's a little bit of charismatic thrown in there too. Yeah, but my mom came from a Mennonite background and her dad actually came out of a Hutterite background. And then on my dad's side of the family, my grandpa, on my dad's side, he grew up an Amish boy in Pennsylvania. And so he left Amish tradition, I guess, ran away from home at 15 years old. And my grandmother on my dad's side, she grew up in a typical Mennonite, old-fashioned Mennonite home as well. So my parents were both raised in Mennonite households, and that's how they first started their home together for the first several years. And then they eventually left, although we have many of the same wonderful traditions like singing, a cappella, 4-part harmony, a love for those things, good cooking, all that. We don't attend an old style Mennonite church anymore.
Yeah. So with all those backgrounds from your parents' side coming together, what was the family dynamic like?
For us growing up?
Yeah.
I think it probably changed quite a bit over the years. I'm number 11 out of 12, so I'm about 19 years. No, sorry, I'm 21 years younger than my oldest brother, actually. So for them, it would have been much more the old-fashioned strict. You dress a certain way, you look a certain way. There's certain things you do, certain things you don't. For me, by the end, being raised, it was a lot different than that. I would say the dynamic was a pretty healthy, happy country growing up. We had our own milk cows, chores, things like that. In the family sawmill, Dad wanted to have a business where he could work. Although he worked a lot, he still was at home and he was in for lunch every meal, and he took us boys out to work with him lots too, once we got old enough. So I would say a very good dynamic, a happy dynamic. Obviously in a big household, there's more children to share your attention among. So one of the dynamics I would say is that not everybody always gets quite as much attention as they might like, and by no fault of the parents. It's just by sheer numbers, or the parents don't realize, or whatever. So I would say overall a very happy childhood, a very blessed childhood. And my father was a father who led and who wanted to raise his children to fear the Lord. Yeah. And I think he exemplified a lot of wonderful Christian virtues. So wasn't perfect, neither was Mom, but more and more as I start raising my own family and talk more and more to people and make friends and hear their backgrounds, I just become increasingly amazed at how much my parents did and how well they did by us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that today you guys shut down the job site and you went and sung at a funeral.
Yeah.
Was that something that was very much there as in your childhood, that you guys do that a lot?
Absolutely. So lots of people who know our family know that we like music, and we're not crazy. I actually don't hardly play an instrument anymore. I play drums. I took a couple of years of piano lessons, which I would have stuck at it, would have been worth it. But anyways, my dad was crazy about music. And so he taught himself, well, in the conservative Mennonite circles, they didn't have instruments, at least in their early growing up. But as they started to branch out and started to leave that, my dad taught himself how to play guitar laboriously. He had big old, what you call frying pan hands. And so he would take his right hand and he would literally put finger after finger onto the frets to form chords because he couldn't do it very well. And he just had to train himself till he was fairly good at bar chording. And so he would play every week in church and he would sing, and singing was a big part. We sang 4-part harmony. He would sing. He would sing for hours a day, and he worked out in the bush back when the kids were little. He would handful. So you can, I guess, probably sing sometimes while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Sing lots in the evening. We'd sing as a family every single evening, even till I was growing up, like I said, number 11 of 12. I still remember that habit. We sang hymns and songs like that, and just happy, good children Christian songs. We would sing every single evening. Dad would play his guitar, and all his family would join in. And so music was huge. And Dad actually did, our family has sung at different funerals, weddings, talent shows. Dad was on a radio show back in Fort Nelson years ago for a fundraiser, and he even could do the yodeling, actually. So he played guitar and yodeled. And the old classic song, She Taught Me to Yodel, about the Swiss maid. Anyways, it's all good, but yeah.
You want to yodel for us?
No, I better not. I'm not very good.
Yeah. It sounds like overall, though, you came from a very healthy family dynamic. Overall,
yeah.
Raising your kids to be willing to give her their free time to sing and all that. With all of that stuff, is that something you're trying to bring into your own family?
Yes, I want to. I think something I've talked about with several of my brothers, or I've heard mentioned before, I very much identify with, is I thought some of these things would just very naturally come into play. I grew up with a dad. It was just so natural. Dad was the leader, and he was not usually domineering. He was very much leader by personality trait. So sometimes they can overstep a little, but he was a very natural leader and also cultivated, I think, godly leadership and over the years. So I thought these things would all come natural. Teaching your family, reading the Bible every single day with them, leading them, telling them what does this mean? What is this speaking of? What's this passage really saying? What's the context? That was just normal in my growing up. So I think I was a little surprised almost when I got married, and some of those habits don't just naturally start happening just because your dad did them.
Yep.
You have to start disciplining yourself and saying, all right, family, let's do this. We're going to read the Bible together. So, for example, my wife, which she's actually really good about this, she often asks me in the evening if we haven't, or just different times, she'll say, can you read a psalm to me, or can we read together? Can we pray together? And I think sometimes husbands can drag their feet a little because they feel embarrassed. They feel like they should have already led in it, and they've failed if their wife is asking them. But it's better to say, you know what, honey, that's a great idea. Let's do it right now. I'll read to you. That's still leadership. Even though you didn't take the initiative right away like maybe you should have, that's still leadership. So I feel like, yes, to answer your original question, I really do want to develop these things in my own home as my children grow up. And I think it takes intentionality to develop it.
Yeah.
And not taking for granted what your parents gave you, but being thankful for that and intentionally seeking to develop the same in your home.
Yeah, you mentioned that your wife kind of pushes you to lead in that way, and I think that's very important to have in a marriage. So, what are some of the things that you can do every single day to cultivate some of the really good things your father taught and your father had in his household?
Yes. And let me think here how I can say this concisely, be on point. Well, first of all, if you want to lead people, true leadership needs to stem out of something that's already going on in your own life. So if you want to lead your family towards God, if you want to lead your family spiritually, you yourself need to be seeking after God. Like, I forget what psalm it is. It's, I think, Psalm 27 or 24, something like that. When you said to me, seek my face, I answered, your face will I seek, O Lord. That should be every man's desire, and that's something I think we should pray. I should correct myself. That should be every Christian's desire. But men, as the head of their household and as the leader who are going to be accountable to God in a special, particular way for their wife and their children, I think men really need to be actively seeking God. So that means reading His Word. That means praying, developing this, and something I've been doing recently, actually. It's been a little bit of a drier season in some ways. Not always sure even what to pray, feeling like they're just dry and empty words sometimes. But praying the Psalms, reading the Psalms out loud to God, saying, Lord, what your word is saying, I know this is true. I know this is good. I want to identify with this. I want the cry of the psalmist to be the cry of my heart. So please make these requests and these praises and all these things that the Psalms are saying, I know they're true. I know they're good. Please let them enter my heart. Let these be reflected through your word, refracted perhaps, from your word into me, and these praises and adorations and requests made back to you that I have found in your word. And so, cultivating a heart desire to follow after God, a heart that daily in all that you do, you want to do it as unto God. And I say that sounds grand. Often you can hear people talking about this, and it sounds like, wow, they've got it all together. I don't. And I'm impatient, and I'm a jerk sometimes, and lots of times I don't feel like reading my Bible. I almost feel I would almost say a little bit like I haven't been doing good enough, and I almost want to kind of keep my back turned to God, almost a little afraid to come to Him. But so I have lots of growing myself to do. But praying, God, open my eyes, conform me to the image of Jesus. And really I think we have to be simple. If we think Paul said, if anyone thinks he knows something, he is nothing. He thinks he is something, sorry. If anybody really thinks he's something, he's nothing. He has no idea. I think we need to get more and more to the place where we feel like, God, I know nothing. Like Jesus said, apart from me, you can do nothing. I think we need to really get to actually feel that, almost a hopelessness that I can't do anything. I feel like I know nothing. I feel like I'm so pathetic and weak here. But it's in that God's strength is perfected.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of desperation that will drive, I can say this, I'm not virtuous and just all hungry and happy for God all the time, but it's actually my weakness and my failure and my guilt that often drives me to my knees. It drives me to the word. I say, I don't know where to turn. I don't know who can answer my questions. I don't know. Only God, only His word, only Him revealing Himself to me by His Spirit through His word. And so I think that's the kind of attitude that we need to grow in, is not puffed up with knowledge. Who cares about all the things you can talk about? It's rather someone who really wants to just know who God is and what He's designed them to do and how they are to live. A heart that's seeking that's hungry for help, for answers, because they see they're weak.
Yeah. I think that takes years and years to cultivate that.
Yep.
It's not just something that comes immediately.
No. And some of this stuff too, you read books, like good books, like Major Ian Thomas. My wife went to the Cape and Ray Harbor there on Thetis Island, just off of Vancouver Island. And Major Ian Thomas's ministry was about helping believers realize that Christ is living in them and He is sufficient for all their needs. But in my experience, you can listen to wonderful books, you can read them, whatever, and it's true. Amen. I'm hoping to get to that point where I'm trusting in God for everything. But I don't think you usually just have some big realization, and I don't even think that somebody else can usually just lead you into that. I think you have to, A.W. Tozer said this, I'm just paraphrasing, but he said you have to come to a state of, these were his words, soul poverty, where you are so empty and so dry, and you have nothing on your own. You don't know how to seek God. You don't know you just feel like you don't know anything. Yeah. It is in that state of spirit that you can't manufacture, you can't speed it up. It's got to happen in God's own timing, that I think people can really start to not just know the words on the page and talk theology, but actually have the promises of God and of His character, who He is, how He is with us, how He treats us, our relationship to Him. I think those things only really begin to settle into our hearts, I should say, when we've been brought to a place of brokenness and soul poverty.
I think it's John Piper that says, when you come to the end of yourself, you come to the beginning of Christ.
Yeah,
and
amen.
What you said earlier about all the theology and everything, theology just means the study of God.
Right, it's good.
It's a good thing, but I heard another quote. I think it's by some other preacher. He says that the distance from your head to your heart is 18 inches, and some people never close that gap.
Yep.
It never sinks down. The knowledge you get from sermons or books or even reading the Bible, it stays up there, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect your life.
Change your heart, change your affections, really. Yeah, and again, that's not to bash theology. I know it's easy to do that. I think part of the reason my experience when I say theology, my experience is, hey, I'm jumping into things and Reformed theology, that's the thing, and all these other losers. It wasn't quite that. I'm exaggerating, but I'm going to figure out, I'm going to have the answers. I'm going to know the things. And I think it was more my attitude was arrogant, and I thought I was something, and I thought I was a cut above the rest, to be honest. And that kind of, when I say theology, sometimes that's what I'm referring to. That is, I think, what Paul meant. If someone thinks he is something, I thought I was something, and I still struggle with this sometimes. I do, for sure. Thinking you are something, you know nothing. Yeah.
I think about the Puritans, and they were the ones that paved the way for what we have today. With, you can pick up any book from them, and it is deep in theology. Mm-hmm. But everything they did, they had to work for it. They studied and they wrestled with it, and
they had to personally wrestle.
Yeah, and a lot of these Puritans, some of them were quite young, but some of them were older men that went through life, and the theology that they had learned it from experience.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not just from reading it and being like, this is great.
This is great. This is true. But
now I can tell everyone like all the stuff I know and all my knowledge, and I have answers for everything.
Right.
But you don't really know it.
Yes, you don't know it well, I guess, until it's put into practice.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Devin, could you pass me your phone there? Actually, we should have a Bible here. Actually, I'll just give me a sec. I'll open up to your Bible.
Don't grab that one. That one's full of heresy. No, I'm kidding. That one's good.
What version is this? ESV?
It's New King James.
New King James? Okay. I just gotta find, it's in Philippians.
What verse are you looking for?
It says, whatever things you have seen in me or whatever else put into practice. It's the end of Philippians chapter. Oops, I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah, that was...
There we go. Galatians, Ephesians. How do I keep missing it? All right, so I have it here. It's Philippians chapter 4. I'll just start at verse 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God which surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you. So there's another version, I don't know if it's NIV or maybe NLT, but he says, the things which you saw in me, put them into practice. And so just the reason I want to bring up this verse is tying that in, that these truths need to be truths that are practiced. The truths we say, we learn, and whatever, it needs to change our life. It needs to have practical implications on our life. And if it's not affecting and transforming our lives, we're missing something. We might even be saying the truth of a matter, but we don't know it. We don't know what we're talking about, really. It's like, I heard Paul Washer use this example once. He heard a young guy preach for an hour and a half or something about the fruit of the Spirit, not the fruit of the Spirit, walking in the Spirit, and how we must walk in the Spirit and all this. And Paul Washer was a young Christian. He came up to this guy and he said, I think you're so right. That was a really good sermon. I just have one problem. How do I walk in the Spirit? And the guy, didn't you listen to the sermon? He said, yeah, I did, but I just want to know how to do that. And the guy kind of blustered. And then an older Christian tapped Paul on the shoulder. He said, step aside, young man. And he stepped in front of Paul to this young preacher and he said, young man, you can't answer this boy over here because I don't think you understand what you're talking about yourself. You've laid out the reasons why we ought to be walking in the Spirit, but you don't yourself know what it means to walk in the Spirit and how to walk in the Spirit. So I tell that story just to illustrate the point that I think the theology we talk about needs to enter into our own lives and hearts. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's good. I think we should end it there, but we'll have you on again. And this is just a teaser for that. So it was good having you on there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
We'll talk again.
Thanks for having me. It was fun to do this last minute.
Bet.